Quickly today. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Ways and Means Committee, starting our public bill hearing today at 1:30 p.m. We have 11 education bills on our agenda. We do have an unusual week in the Maryland House of Delegates, and that we will be meeting as a full body once again at 3 p.m. today. So just a reminder to everyone to move things as fast as one can with your own testimony, and that's mostly to the members. Other people are being timed. So without further ado, my teammate from District 14, Delegate Queen, House Bill 771.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Kaiser and Vice Chair Washington and the members of Ways and Means Committee. So I'm Delegate Queen from the record. I'm talking to you today about HB 771. It's also a cross-file SB 548. This bill is dealing with the concept, a topic of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And so that's a term I think that's familiar with your committee because you passed either last year or the year before a bill that allows for educators to be aware and trained on understanding issues related to trauma-informed treatment. And so they know a little bit about ACEs. So ACEs, what we refer to them are traumatic experiences that children experience between the ages of 0 to 7 years old. And they're issues related to possible physical or mental abuse. It could be neglect that they've experienced. They could have been homeless. They could have had a family member who's incarcerated, or they may have experienced a family member commit suicide. These or had a very caustic divorce. These issues impact them certainly in their development, in their ability to achieve in school, and also it can have impact to their physical health. And so what we want to do with this bill, we already have in place in the state where we monitor for what we call youth risk behaviors. We have what's called this youth risk behaviors surveillance system, where we're looking at unhealthy behaviors with youth, alcohol, drug, tobacco use, either dietary behavior, physical inactivity, obesity. And so there are a list of questions that the survey does for middle to high school students. And that information is good public health information. So we know where to provide treatment or to address some of these issues to mitigate their impacts to our students as they become adults. And so what this bill asks is that we add questions related to ACEs to that survey so that we, again, can look at the impacts of those adverse childhood experiences to our Maryland youth to make sure that we can have the support systems in place, the help for those families, the help for those students so they can be more resilient and to, again, mitigate some of the adverse effects that are due to ACEs. And so there's data, and some of the advocates will come to talk to you about it, but there's a lot of data that talks to what would be possibly health outcomes that could be mitigated if we knew better about ACEs early on so that we could address those issues. So I look for a favorable response to this bill, HB 771, and the cross-file SB 548. And thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Queen. Any questions for Delegate Queen? Thank you very much, Delegate Queen. You have 5 people signed up. I'll start with Teresa Dudley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Teresa Mitchell Dudley, and I am a middle school social studies and science teacher from Prince George's County, but I also serve as the president of the Prince George's County Educators Association. One of the biggest things that we have been working on, are the adverse childhood experiences that our students face, because we find out that the adverse childhood experiences are what lead to the sort of traumatic responses that we see in the building. And the students who come from a myriad of background issues, whether there be extensive poverty, drug abuse, whether there be sexual abuse, those types of adverse childhood experiences. If we could get some of that data from the children, it would be effective in allowing us to help remedy some of those causes. I first want to make sure that I thank everyone here for their vote on the blueprint and the passage this week, because that also helps us to handle some of the trauma-informed education, the social emotional learning that is going to be required. But this bill will add a different component to this because some of the self-reporting does not get done. And so if we know that there's a percentage of children that are suffering from one sort of adverse childhood experience or another, then that would be helpful. The other component of this bill that it addresses is the use of tobacco as well. And I think that that's also critical with the high amount of students that we're seeing using tobacco in different areas. The vaping epidemic, a lot of children are seeing people smoking on TV and thinking that it's cool again. So we want to make sure that we address these two components. And I want to thank the makers of this bill for putting it forward. I ask you to vote favorably on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dudley. Mr. Edwards?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair of the committee, and all committee members. My name is Jeffrey Edwards. I'm a medical student at the Stanford University School of Medicine and Master of Public Health student at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And I have experience and knowledge in these fields that informs my support of this bill, and thus I urge a favorable vote on HB 771. In particular, I've worked with Senator Augustine's office, as well as Delegate Queen's office, to establish a relationship with Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris and the Office of the California Surgeon General, which was created to implement their innovative ACEs Aware initiative. Adverse childhood experiences, as have been mentioned, are those experiences that require significant adaptation by the developing child in terms of psychological, social, and neurodevelopmental systems, and those are which are outside of the normal expected environment. The CDC nationally reports that nearly 2/3 of children have experienced one ACE, with 1/5 of children experiencing more than 2 ACEs during their childhood. The impact of ACEs are far-reaching. As mentioned, there have been many associations between ACE burdens and poor school performance, as well as increased risk of suicide attempts. And further, these cause downstream impacts across the lifespan, with higher rates of depression, inflammatory diseases such as cancer, and metabolic diseases like diabetes in adults who suffered significant ACE burdens during their childhood. All of these likely being mediated by a physiologic toxic stress response. And though we have these data at the national level, the current data for ACEs in Maryland are incomplete. As mentioned before, the current legislation allows for omission of questions surrounding ACEs on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey as it's currently administered. By making these questions mandatory, we can better understand the current landscape of ACEs at the county and state level to then make targeted public policy decisions. So in conclusion, I strongly urge a favorable vote on this bill so that we can work towards a better Maryland for all children. Data are critical in making these informed decisions that will mitigate the impact of ACEs in all of our children.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edwards. Next have Diana Phillip on the list. Wendy Lane.
Yes, I'm here.
Wendy, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify. And my name is Wendy Lane. I'm a pediatrician and a public health professional testifying on behalf of this bill.
Right here.
On behalf of the State Council on Child Abuse and Neglect, for which I serve as chair. As been mentioned before, we know that adverse childhood experiences can have significant long-term physical and mental health consequences. Multiple studies have confirmed this. And we also know that the cost of adverse childhood experiences in the US can be hundreds of millions of dollars. And a lot of that ends up being borne by state Medicaid programs. to deal with the health consequences, both physical and mental. ACE data has been collected in the Maryland Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance Survey, which is a survey of adults in Maryland. It was collected in 2015 and 2018, again, demonstrating that ACEs are very common and that there is a strong dose-response relationship between adverse childhood experiences and negative health outcomes. While this data is valuable, it has some limitations because it's collected from adults where the adverse childhood experiences could have occurred and often have occurred decades before. There's a lot of value in collecting data directly from adolescents. The experiences are much more temporal to those adverse childhood experiences are much more temporal to these children's lives and maybe ongoing as the data is being collected. So collecting this data during the teenage years has a bunch of advantages. First of all, it provides data on the current experience of ACEs among students in Maryland. It also allows, if you collect it over many years, it allows you to compare data over time to assess the extent to which prevention efforts are reducing ACEs. It also provides information. So the bill requires that data be broken down by jurisdiction. It also allows us to provide information about which communities and groups are most affected by ACEs. And that allows for effective and equitable distribution of resources and services to those at greatest need. And I would recommend that you refer to my testimony for some data on local prevalence. Another thing that I would just mention in my last couple seconds is that
are you in favor or opposed to the bill?
I'm sorry, I am in favor of the bill, but I would also recommend that we add some information on breaking the data down by race, ethnicity, and gender.
Thank you. Diana Phillip.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of Ways and Means. My name is Diana Phillip with NARA Pro-Choice Maryland. We are in favor of House Bill 771. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is what we call YRBIS, is really, really important for nonprofits and folks that are so dedicated to good data and good methodology and how that data collection is conducted. And the CDC, when they took over about 10 years ago, a lot more people became very, very interested in YRBIS and its results. How we use this data in the world of nonprofit management, in the world of youth organizing, is that in terms of trauma-informed care, we want to see those results, the way that youth respond to questions about bullying, about violence that is happening on campus. For the LGBTQ community, making sure that we are collecting that information about adverse experiences that they're having on campus, suicide ideation, which is a huge component to some of the things that really wake up people about the differences that LGBTQ youth experience in their lives. Sorry, and regarding dating violence, when we go to district attorneys and local crisis intervention agencies, legal services, to make sure that people understand that young people also experience dating violence. And of course, in our work, when we're looking at sex education, contraception, access to sexual reproductive health care, in order to prevent STIs and unintended pregnancy. And when I looked at the Maryland YRBIS over the years, I noticed that there were questions that were missing. In fact, if you look at the Montgomery County one for high school in 2018, you can see how there's questions about violence experience and then it jumps to dating violence, but it skips over the 3 questions that have to do with non-consensual sexual contact. And that's incredibly important for the work that all of us are doing in order to keep youth healthy. And so I want to thank Delegate Queen for bringing this bill and to the attention that I didn't realize Maryland was in a position to pick and choose what questions to use. And I really think that all the questions that the CDC has done an amazing job in identifying as we evolve as a nation are the ones that should be included every time. So thank you. And I urge a favorable report for HB 771.
Thank you, Ms. Phillip. Anyone have any questions for any of these four individuals? All right, thank you all very much. We're done with the hearing on House Bill 771. We'll move to House Bill 798 from the Frederick County Delegation. Great to see you, Delegate Lewis Young.
Thank you very much. Nice seeing you too, Madam Chair, and the rest of the Ways and Means Committee. I am back with a Frederick County delegation bill that may sound familiar to you. You heard it last year. In fact, the cross file did pass in the Senate, but you'll also remember we ran out of time. It's actually a pretty straightforward bill. It puts a process in place to replace a resignation on the Board of Education. In particular, it addresses the circumstance when someone resigns 30 days or less prior to the cutoff for the primary registration. The bill has a few minor changes. There is an amendment in on it. If you don't have it before you, I will get it to you. And we were due to vote on that amendment earlier today. We did not do that because of the change in our floor session. However, we will be voting on it as soon as we can get everyone together. I'm fairly confident the amendment will pass because it's predominantly clarifying language. The only significant aspect of the amendment, other than just words that make the definition stronger, is that the amendment states that once the county executive appoints a replacement, that appointment must be approved by the county council. So thank you for your time and attention. Appreciate your support so that going forward, when we have a resignation, we have a smoother nomination and replacement process.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions for Delegate Lewis Young? All right, thank you. Seeing none, we're done with the hearing on House Bill 798. We'll move to House Bill 822. Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks for the hearing. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 822. House Bill 822 requires the Baltimore County Public School System to publish on its website the contact information for each member of the Baltimore County Board of Education, including an email address, a physical mailing address, and a direct number that is provided to the members by the school system itself. Baltimore County is one of the only boards of education which does not provide full contact information to the public to each of its members of Board of Education. And this frequently causes confusion when parents or students or some interested party needs to reach out and talk to somebody about a problem with the school system. With COVID-19 and the closure of the in-person schools, this is the issues that parents are having has come to a boiling point, and my office has been inundated with questions from parents and students about, I'm not getting an appropriate IEP. How do I get back into or subscribe to in-person classes? And this has been months and months and months now. So we wanted to put this simple bill in place so that every parent, every student, every interested person had a direct path of communication to their Board of Education member. It's a pretty simple bill. And with that, I'll close. I'd be happy to take any questions and ask for a favorable report.
Thank you, Delegate Grammer. Any questions for Delegate Grammer? Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you so much.
We're done with the hearing on House Bill 822. Is Delegate Young here, Delegate Pat Young? Let me just double check that he's not in the waiting room. There he is. Delegate Pat Young, go ahead with House Bill 824.
Thank you, Madam Chair. members of the committee, and I'm turning on my video now. Excellent. Morning, afternoon, good to see you. Pulling up my folder. Happy to present to you HB 824, Public Schools Cybersecurity Guide and Training Course, Development, Implementation, Reporting. So as some of you may know, I became the chair of the Joint Committee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Biotech over the interim. The work of the committee over the last year has been amazing, identifying areas where we can improve, where we must improve, and also just make the state's interaction over the web, over the internet, more one, equitable, and two, safe. What I'm presenting here in HB 824, it would require the State Department of Education, along with Behavioral Health Administration, the Maryland Center for School Safety, and the Department of Information Technology to jointly develop and publish a cyber safety guide and training course. This course would contain information and guidance on safe internet practices, social media, and technology usage for students, parents, and employees in public schools. Even before the pandemic, students, parents, Marylanders were interacting over the internet in a way that we hadn't seen before. Now that we've had to be forced online into virtual environments to stay safe, the fact that we're using this technology to work, to go to school, to educate ourselves, we are spending so much time online that this is if not now, then when. I say it's the most important time to start focusing on these issues in a comprehensive way, not an anecdotal way, but to create policy and to make sure that we're engaging and encouraging Marylanders to stay safe online and giving them resources to do so. I would like to point out that this resource would also fill the need of educating students and staff on how to identify risks, identify potential risks to their safety, to their identity, and to their loved ones. Parents and teachers need resources to help them effectively guide them and their students and their children through the challenges and issues present through the modern internet. With students stuck at home and unable to attend in-person lessons, these resources are needed now more than ever, and this bill would help create that resource. I thank you for your time and urge you to consider a favorable report on HB 824. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions for Delegate Young? Delegate Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Young, for this important bill. I just wanted to ask you, did it come up in your discussions? I know we've had some school systems that have had the major cyber attacks and things of that nature. Can you touch on how easy it is for vulnerable school systems, in addition to other small businesses and nonprofits? This is something that's often overlooked until there's a problem. So can you sort of touch on what you discussed in creating the bill and just how vulnerable a lot of systems are?
Sure, and I will say that and as mentioning that during the interim, I was asked and appointed to the House Chair of the Joint Committee. And I know that I'm going to have some folks that have signed up to testify for the bill. I hope that they can maybe go into more of a personal experience, but I will be happy to give you what my conversations have been, and just surprising in terms of the lack of just general information associated with what the risks are, what they look like, and how to address them once they present. So what you're saying, it's not even limited to age range either. I think that there's a misconception that there are folks that are older that don't seem to understand what the risks are, but it's across the board. Anybody that's working either in a virtual environment or even before it was a virtual environment, but just on your state issued laptop or your technology that was given to you from your employer, you feel safe because it's yours, and you get a false sense of security associated with it because you think that there's a check above you protecting you. And I think that there's, what I found at least, and this is just anecdotal for me and to discuss with you, and happy to keep going after the hearing, that there's a false sense of security present to our own experience with our technology and with the internet because it's ours and we have a hold on it. And we like to think if it's issued, that someone else is sort of playing that role of security or check, and that's not always the case. which leaves everybody vulnerable. So it doesn't, I don't think comprehensively answers your question, but kind of touches on what I found, what I was surprised at.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's a great bill. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you. Any other questions for Delegate Young? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Delegate. I have 2 people signed up. First, I'll start with Lois Palin. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Kaiser and Vice Chairman Washington and members of the committee. And thank you for this opportunity to provide support and testimony on HB 824. I am Dr. Lois Palin, and I am the Senior Director at the Center for Security Studies at the University of Maryland Global Campus. I worked in technology for over 30 years, long before we knew that computer risk management network troubleshooting would morph into what we now call the field of cybersecurity, a domain that we really need to protect. While I develop curriculum and teach cybersecurity in higher education, I have also focused on the need to introduce cybersecurity concepts into the K-12 curriculum and into the home environment throughout my career. But several years ago, I participated in the Maryland State Department of Education Computer Science Curriculum Working Group to actually advance K-12 cybersecurity curricular standards. And more recently, I've authored several children's books about cybersecurity related topics and their cybersecurity to raise awareness. So over time, I've witnessed an ever-growing need for cybersecurity awareness and training. The tools and resources needed for such awareness run the gamut of national and local government standards development, public and private cybersecurity working groups, industry training, special research grants, and where we are today with state legislation. I stress that all of these avenues are needed and more, as the concerns about safe online practices for students and parents and school employees grow. The awareness was needed before COVID-19, and now with increased virtual learning, the issues have increased exponentially. The mere fact is that more online users will lead to more misuse in the areas of sharing private information and communicating with strangers, posting inappropriate content, joining groups that are not age appropriate, and actually misusing their computers and smartphones and tablets for nefarious activities. But too numerous to summarize here, my written testimony on record provides additional insight in successful ongoing efforts by public and private entities to support cybersecurity awareness at the K-12 level and beyond. And we have collaborated with many of these entities to push forward the K-12 awareness agenda. But I want to summarize my support of this bill in that it includes individuals who have the most influence over students. And this is particularly parents, teachers, and school counselors. It also provides realistic training, and I stress reporting about how to use the web safely, making the entire school system, and we must remember the data resources, more secure from malicious actors. And it also introduces cybersecurity at an early age, and it just might cause them to think about cyber as a career.
Thank you, Ms. Palin. 3 minutes are up. You support the bill?
I do support the bill, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Katherine Carter? Good to see you.
Hi, surviving. My name is Katherine Carter. I live in District 9, and I'm writing in support of HB 824. The internet's a double-edged sword with COVID, but then you also deal with bullying and self-esteem. And many parents are left to pick up the pieces or ban social media altogether. A lot of parents of teenagers existed before the internet or had a MySpace account like I did, and not aware of all that a child with an undeveloped frontal lobe and all the power of the internet can do. Also protecting our kids from identity theft for their, I've had 2 college-age family members who have had thousands of dollars stolen from them just this past year. I tell their mom that her teenagers are like the canary in the mine on what I need to teach my teenagers. And then also, I think this is an important bill because I've worked in companies, and my husband, his expertise in cybersecurity. And the most significant weakness in an agency or company is the insider threats. You can have all the firewalls, secure cloud, password protection, triple encryption, but employees not following cybersecurity process can cause significant damage. Employees, through carelessness or accident, unwittingly compromise the security. They open their company or agency to malicious exploitations, theft or destruction of data or the company communication or information technology source resources. We've seen this play out in the recent ransomware attacks on the Howard County Judiciary System, Baltimore City and Baltimore City County Schools. However, we can instruct our students from 3rd grade up to 12th on cybersecurity threats and best practices. This bill will not only create a future workforce, prepare they enter the government jobs that will help Maryland thrive economically, but may inspire more students to enter cybersecurity field, like my son Atticus, as they learn the need and damage that these threats cause our nation and commercial infrastructure. There are more jobs than qualified applicants in cybersecurity and computer engineering, especially in Maryland. And also students can learn, like I'm always telling my teenager, who's 16 now, the importance of a clean record and a clean social media for background checks when applying for security clearances. So in closing, I'm asking for a favorable vote for HB 824 to help support parents like me who could use some cybersecurity expertise on instructing our kids and also inspiring our kids to go into this field, but also making sure that they have the ability to get the clearances needed to go into these fields in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Any questions for Ms. Palin or Ms. Carter? Yes, Delegate Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for Ms. Palin, if she's still here, I just wanted to touch on some of the simple ways that you can train your workforce to with annual training that is not expensive. And I haven't looked this up to look at the fiscal note, but there's a lot of very simple online trainings that our workforce can go through, correct, that could sort of walk you through what are the common tricks that, nefarious actors use just to get somebody to click on, a link or answer an email that immediately makes the system vulnerable. And it's important to do this annually because as we figure out their tricks, they come up with new ones. Can you just sort of speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Actually, at UMGC, we have annual training for security awareness. And one of the things that you're talking about is the major way that malicious actors get information is through phishing. And phishing is through email and making some emails look official that are really not, that dupe people into putting their personal information or providing information about bank accounts or login. So there's quite a bit. As a matter of fact, there's quite a bit of tools and technologies out there that provide cybersecurity awareness training. And like I said in my testimony, it runs the gamut of training that's suitable for businesses, training that's suitable for the K-12 environment, and training that's suitable for even some of the lower grades. So I am personally aware of lots of tools and technologies from organizations that I mentioned in my written testimony about having things available. And it's just a matter of aggregating some of that information and making sure that it's done at an age appropriate level.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Delegate Rose. Thank you both for testifying and providing those answers. If there are no other questions, we are done with the hearing on House Bill 824. We will move to House Bill 724. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Michelle Guyton, and I'm here to present for your consideration House Bill 724. So I want to say up front that this is actually a true emergency education bill that requires extension of transition services for special education students who would otherwise be graduating in just a few months, but have not been able to access their job coaching and the appropriate services due to the pandemic shutdown. So I've been heavily involved in transition policy for several years, and I understand, it's fairly complicated. So if anyone has questions, please ask about the bill. because I really believe that if we fail in this last year of school that prepares special education students to be independent and to have future jobs, then nothing else that we've done in the previous 11 years matters nearly as much. So the provision of transition services is not optional. It's required by the Federal Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. And that defines transition services as a set of activities that are designed to be result-oriented to facilitate a student's movement from school to post-school activities. So basically, to simply put, it's the law that says that we have the responsibility to adequately prepare graduating special education students for their futures. And while all students were impacted by the pandemic shutdown this year, few are as hard hit as this particular cohort of students who were either actively participating in job coaching or about to, and were unable to continue due to the safety concerns of COVID-19. So despite this complete lack of preparation, many of them will be forced to graduate in about 2 months from our public schools because they've aged out or they've completed their other graduation requirements. And so this is why I'm asking for a favorable report on House Bill 724. It's designed to offer these students a little more time to prepare for the adult world by allowing them to access the in-person transition services that they missed in 2020. I do want to note that the fiscal note and the opposition letters that you have by MABE and MACO are obviously, based on my perusal of them, actually in response to the Senate version of the bill introduced by Senator Peters. This was cross-filed during my drafting process, but before this bill that you're looking at today was actually completed. And this bill identifies and corrects some of the concerns in the previous bill and that they've noted in their opposition letters. And it significantly limits both the numbers of students eligible for this program and the amount of services that's required. And this affects the fiscal note more than anything. Virginia also has a similar bill in play right now with a fiscal note of 5 million, which is much, much, much less than what you have in front of you for this bill. But they are planning to service twice as many students. So I do want to address that up front as an inaccurate fiscal note. Thank you very much, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Any questions for Delegate? There are 3 people signed up, all that are in the Zoom already. We'll start with Leslie Margolis.
Thank you. For the record, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Leslie Margolis. I'm a managing attorney at Disability Rights Maryland, and I'm here today on behalf of Disability Rights Maryland and the Education Advocacy Coalition. And I'm glad to be here in support of House Bill 724. So as Delegate Guyton said, transition is defined by federal and state law as a coordinated set of activities. So if it's done properly, it really lays out the path to get from where the student is when transition planning begins at age 14 to where everybody, including the student, wants that student to be when they exit the school system. So it lays out a year-by-year plan with goals and objectives that really are also part of the IEP. And taking a chunk of that out of the equation really matters for students. We have heard through the entire pandemic from many anxious parents who have been asking about the possibility of extending their children's services because they have not been able to access the pieces of their children's transition plans that are so important for them. And when we approached the State Department of Education about that, what we were told is that that would be an individualized decision for the IEP team to make, which is true, but without the structure of knowing it is possible to extend services, parents will be forced to engage in this incredibly uphill battle to convince the IEP team that it is possible, and then to deal with the piece of trying to ensure that if their child is eligible for services from DDA, that they can preserve the right to transitioning youth services or the other adult service agencies. So this bill would ensure that students could continue and get additional, the makeup services, and then also still remain eligible for their services through the adult agencies. We also have heard from families who are facing a situation where their children were actually not supposed to leave school this year. They have more time in the school system, but because assessments were waived, they're now being told that their students have to leave early. So they're not even getting the full amount of transition services that they were entitled to. They're being told, hey, your child doesn't have to take these assessments anymore, so they can leave the school system, which is a complete distortion of what the transition process is about, what special education is about. This bill really is important for so many of the students that we represent at Disability Rights Maryland and that the members of our Education Advocacy Coalition represent or support. So again, I'm glad to be here in support of the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve Bress.
There, hopefully I'm unmuted. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Steve Bress. I'm a resident of Montgomery County, and I'm in favor of Bill 724. I have a lot of experience with autism and its effects. My son is 18 years old and was diagnosed with autism when he was 2. This bill directly addresses his current needs. He is on a diploma track in a 100% special needs school. For him, this is the least restrictive environment and has allowed him to learn, grow as a person, and gain critical skills for the real world. As things stand now, he will have enough credits to graduate high school next spring. During the IEP meeting at the very beginning of lockdown, our IEP team worked out a plan that would have had him spend a significant amount of time in the community in preparation for either continuing education or a job. My son can barely conceive of what a job entails, much less why he would want such a thing. Community time was supposed to expose him to some of the possibilities and let him see what he could do. The hope was that this controlled and supported investigation into the working world would help him find some kind of job or work environment that would interest him. We were expecting that this exploration would help guide him and plan for his future. If the job required it, college would certainly be a possibility. The idea of a goal job would provide the motivation to continuing his education, most likely at a community college. My son requires quite a bit of support to be successful. For in-person schooling, he requires a one-on-one assistance to help him get through the day, as well as for the bus trip to and from school. The school environment provides something that he simply can't get at home, the ability to interact with people that are not family. While this sounds like it would be impossible for him to transition to a college job, he had been making great progress toward more independence. During the lockdown, he has lost a lot of ground with his social skills and independence. While he has done fairly well with the academic part of virtual learning, he has no way to have any real interactions with other students. He has learned that if they annoy him, he can mute the computer and not have to hear them. While that's the solution for him, it doesn't translate to the real world and interacting with managers and coworkers. He also doesn't understand that by not listening, high school graduation is imminent. However, he is not ready to continue his education or in any way be functional without supports. Once he graduates, even those supports that were eventually provided to him through the autism waiver will stop. The skill set needed to attend college and successfully hold down a job is not a requirement for high school graduation. With our IEP team, we had just worked out an excellent transition plan for him and had hoped that this would help him be successful after graduation. During the lockdown, he has lost this transition plan and has lost many of the social skills required for future success and for when the world reopens. As I know, cost is an issue. As for the cost, allowing these students the choice of spending another year in school, honing their skills, you can make the difference between them being an ongoing drain on the budget or being a contributing member of society. And that's certainly the goal for my son. So we support HB 724. We hope that you will. It will make a difference to my son and hopefully many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bress. Ms. Whiterlight, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sorry, Weirlight. Yes, close enough. Still good. Thank you. It is an honor to present my oral testimony in support of this bill. Thank you to Delegate Guyton for your education and advocacy on behalf of the special needs families and your dedication to supporting on our sometimes difficult journeys. I'm a single mother who works multiple jobs, and my son is a special needs student with a comprehensive IEP due to his autism, epilepsy, and other disabilities. As of now, he is going to graduate high school in less than 4 months with a certificate. From the time he was 5 until about age 17, he attended a non-public special education school. Since then, he and his Baltimore County Public School team worked very hard to successfully transition him from the most restrictive non-residential high school to attending classes outside of general education and working at a large farm with multiple tasks and responsibilities with his one-on-one aide. Before March 2020, we were talking with that community work experience to increase his work hours, and we were talking with another potential community work experience for the other part of the day. Since March 2020, with the pandemic, my son has sat at home in front of a computer, watching videos about different jobs he can consider, listening to a teacher talk about the importance of being respectful and dressing appropriately for a job, and working collaboratively on a resume with that teacher. This is not what the school's IEP team decided he needs. Rather, IEP and related needs assessments state that he should be out in the community learning specific job skills. It's hard to learn how to do a job from behind a computer, unless of course you're pursuing an IT career. Before school closed almost a year ago, my son was in the community learning from his mentors at the farm. He has most likely lost the majority of his skills he was using at the farm, and he will not have the opportunity to relearn them with an adult service provider in June because job training is not among the responsibilities of adult service providers. This is a travesty. Drexel University has reported that up to 80% of people with autism are unemployed or underemployed, and my son has shown he can work. He wants to work, and he tells me consistently that he misses the farm. All that work that he's done and all the school has done. Next week, we will participate in an IEP team meeting to talk about school until May and possible compensatory education services. It is unknown to me if the school system will offer the requisite services he needs. I know that if I have to retain an attorney to help me fight for his compensatory education services, I will have to find between $7,500 to $15,000 as a single parent. It would be so much better if I knew I would have the opportunity to choose if he could continue attending school, receive educational services like job coaching, or join the adult service world, which many recognize as stepping off of a cliff due to the dearth of available services. I know there are costs involved with this bill, but consider I do not believe my son needs to be in school all day, and consider that not all parents of students who would qualify for this bill would choose to keep their students from transitioning to adult services. As with all of life, the key is to provide options given individual circumstances. Please give my son and those like him a chance to have employment prospects by providing him with the extended time for school transition services he needs and deserves. It wasn't his fault the pandemic happened, and he should not be penalized for it by losing his final year in school and potential employment prospects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for any of the three who spoke this afternoon? Thank you all very much for testifying today. Glad that you're involved in the process. Thank you to Delegate Guyton for the bill. We are done with the hearing on House Bill 724. We will move to House Bill 753. Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to testify on House Bill 753. I'm Eric Ebersol for the record. In my time as a teacher, I've been consistently impressed with maturity and awareness of students I taught. They're not only in tune with policies and issues of the day, but many of them are eager to participate actively in establishing and influencing policy. And one way for them to do this is through peaceful and productive demonstration. It's important in school setting they understand the parameters both for themselves and for the school setting while still experiencing that opportunity. This legislation will help to clarify to students in a consistent and predictable manner the way for them to be able to demonstrate and express themselves, helping to clear the way for them to do just that. But it will establish basic guidelines to protect the educational setting for instruction as well. Each school system will be required to establish a demonstration policy that's available to students that would allow them to experience these predictable rules. And among the major points that will be honored in such a policy would be a definition of what would be peaceful student demonstration, that's there in the bill, protections of health, safety, and welfare for students and school personnel in authorizing demonstrations, conditions students must adhere to in terms of notification and potential school disruption, and protections against excessive or unnecessary punishment of students. Specifically, the policy shall contain guidelines for times and places and manner of expression, limitations on language that has the intent to harass or threaten or intimidate others. I will point out that we saw last week some very responsible students who understand how to work, and they were very excited about this bill. They let me know they had 30 people to testify. And all I had to do was say, that's not such a good idea. Really get it down as to at least 4 or 5 people. And they understood. They were mature enough to get it. They're mature enough to understand how to act within rules and certain suggestions. And they've done that. And with that, I will turn it over to them unless you have questions, to talk about how they've view this bill.
Thank you, Delegate Ebersol. Was there anything in your legislation about a limited number of these demonstrations during the school day?
No, it didn't say that. The policy doesn't say that the county can't do that. So they can establish their own policy. There's only a few guidelines. And so that it doesn't speak to the fact that they couldn't do that if they wanted to put those in their own.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Are there any other questions for Delegate Ebersol? Seeing no others, I'll call on those signed up. Jonathan DePietro.
Good afternoon, Chair Kaiser and members of the committee. Thank you very much for hearing my testimony in favor of House Bill 753. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Jonathan DePietro. I'm the director of the Maryland Student Coalition. I also serve on the Howard County Human Rights Commission, and I chair the Legislative Affairs Committee for the Howard County Association of Student Councils. To start off, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Maryland Student Coalition that coordinated this legislative effort. The Maryland Student Coalition is comprised of almost 60 student leaders from across all corners of the state of Maryland, including 16 different school systems. The coalition includes activists, leaders, organizers, and several student members of the boards. One of the most important aspects of this group, though, is it looks like the students of Maryland has diverse backgrounds, diverse perspectives, and diverse political opinions. Testimony package C that was submitted includes about 50 forms of written testimony. As Delegate Ebersol said, we were prepared to have about 30 people testify, but we didn't want to take up your entire day, so we limited the amount of people that were coming to speak. To talk about this initiative, it began as a way to address the inconsistencies around policies and demonstrations. There was a lot of differences and inconsistencies ranging from school to school and school system to school system. In this policy, it directly addresses some of these concerns. Section D prohibits schools from punishing students for organizing or participating in peaceful demonstrations on school grounds. This is a way for the schools to be able to clearly protect the rights for students to demonstrate. Section D subsection 1 establishes reasonable notice. In this case, it's 48 hours, which provides the school system the clear ability to manage demonstrations that occur under their jurisdiction. And Section F requires local jurisdictions to establish policies and procedures in accordance with this bill. This ensures the equal implementation of the policy across the school systems. And it also prevents any possible liability of the school systems that do currently limit student demonstrations for infringing on First Amendment. House Bill 753 is essential because it legislates constitutional protections for students. This is a progressive way to address a constitutional issue. I urge the committee to issue a favorable report for House Bill 753 because it protects the rights of students, ensures equal implementation of those rights, and establishes mutually agreed upon parameters to ensure the safety in students during those demonstrations. I thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have in the future. I yield the remainder of my time.
No yielding of time, just finishing up. Next, we'll take questions after the fifth student. The next person testifying is Jason Wu.
Good afternoon, Chair Kaiser and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Jason Wu. I'm a senior at Poolsville High School in Montgomery County and student member of the Maryland State Board of Education. Today, I'm here to voice my support for House Bill 753, a bill that protects student-organized peaceful demonstrations. Throughout the past few months, I've spoken to hundreds of students here in Maryland about the pressing issues of our time. Students from all corners of our state share with me their stories of advocacy. These students are the embodiment of the passionate youth, whether it be within their own communities and efforts to become more environmentally cognizant, or standing shoulder to shoulder with peers from around the state to stand against police brutality. As students, our First Amendment right to free speech is perhaps our greatest ability to affect change. This legislation has the power to make sure that the voices of our youth, those responsible for the future that we choose to build, are never dismissed, are never ignored, and are never silenced. With House Bill 753, we see two paths forward. If this bill fails, students are restricted in their ability to practice their duties in civic engagement. On the other hand, with the passing of this legislation, we see a future where students are able to peacefully come together and make their voices heard. We see a future where a 12th grader from Montgomery County can continue to organize walkouts and awareness for the LGBT community. We see a future where a 7th grader from Garrett County can continue to organize strikes against climate change. The choice is clear, and the decisions made upon this bill are vital to the prosperity of our future. In closing, I urge the members of the House and Ways Committee to stand with students and to stand with House Bill 753. Thank you.
Thank you. We next have Hunter Craig.
Good afternoon, Chair Kaiser, Vice Chair Washington, and esteemed members of the committee. My name is Hunter Craig, and I am speaking today as the Assistant Director of the Maryland Student Coalition in favor of House Bill 753. It can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. This argument made by Supreme Court Justice Abe Fortas during the Tinker v. Des Moines trial illuminates the legal right that students have to demonstrate on school grounds. The 1969 ruling made clear that students' constitutional rights shall not be muted upon stepping foot into a public institution that they're legally required to attend. House Bill 753 will serve to protect such universal rights for students without the fear of additional consequences. This bill will also elevate student voice and recognize the importance of peaceful demonstration. Furthermore, this bill will offer an unintentional but wholly desired educational experience, civic engagement. Now, let me be clear. If passed, this bill will not serve as a loophole for students to get out of school. It's simply a uniformed code that permits mutually agreed upon conditions between students and administration when it comes to organizing a student demonstration. It also provides a reasonable time frame for student leaders to organize logistics with their school administration. Lastly, having local jurisdictions shape their own policy will ensure that it fits the respective school system's needs and applies equal implementation to all students across the district. If we continue going by the status quo, it will leave open the opportunity for schools and local jurisdictions to unjustly restrict free speech. Now, I have personally participated in a walkout demonstration as a student in the Howard County Public School System. In March of 2018, students at my school and around the country led an organized and peaceful movement as a response to the mass shooting that took place 1 month prior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Our demonstration turned out to be a huge success. Students conducted themselves in a respectful manner, and staff encouraged my fellow peers and I to stand up for what we believed in. Hundreds of students walked out, gathered on the football field bleachers, and listened to powerful speeches given by our classmates. I will never forget this experience and the role we all played in making our voices heard. However, this opportunity is not equal throughout the state of Maryland. Time and time again, we hear politicians say that students are our future. Well, it's time for the politicians to give the future a voice free from barriers. For the reasons stated above, I urge the committee to issue a favorable report of House Bill 753. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We next have Iris Jean or Jean.
Sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Iris Jean. I use she, they pronouns. I'm 17 and a junior from Riverhill High School in Howard County, Maryland. I'm founder of Sunrise River in Howard County and a member of the Howard County Association of Student Council's Environmental Affairs Committee. And I am here to testify in favor of House Bill 753. I want to start off by talking about my personal experience and why this is really important to me. In 8th grade, I organized a walkout at Clarksville Middle School on the 20th anniversary of the Columbine shooting to protest against gun violence. In 10th grade, I organized a climate strike at Riverhill High School on September 20th, 2019, and organized other students in Howard County to lead climate strikes at many other high schools as part of the largest global climate strike in history, with 4 million people across the world participating on a historic day. Mobilizations like these have the power to bring urgent attention to the most pressing issues in our society and get more people involved in making a difference. As someone who has organized demonstrations on school grounds and outside of school grounds, I can personally say that this bill is of extreme urgency in order to protect students' crucial rights to peacefully demonstrate. Students should not be discouraged from organizing demonstrations because of fear of punishment from the school, because that is hypocritical to what our schools teach us. I'm fortunate that my school excused the short absences from class for the protests, and I want every student in Maryland to be afforded this privilege. That should be a right. Many say that students should do it outside of school, but school is like our second home. It is a place where we learn about the world and use our knowledge to make this world better. In school, we learn about the importance of our Bill of Rights, especially our First Amendment rights. We are taught to be proud of this country because we have the freedom to express ourselves, petition the government, and assemble. While our country is far from perfect, these fundamental rights have helped our country become better because throughout history, young people have organized and fought against injustices. Adults say that the youth are our future, which is true, but we are also the present and the now. When Greta Thunberg started school striking for climate, adults told her to go back to school and get an education. But this is education. Activism is education. If we're going to be fed all of this knowledge every day, we have the right to apply that knowledge beyond the classroom to create a vision of the world we seek. In order for students to become the independent leaders of today and tomorrow, we need you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Galillo?
Yes, it's Claire Galillo. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the House Ways and Means Committee, and everyone else. My name is Claire Galillo, and I'm a senior at Richard Montgomery High School in Rockville, Maryland. I'm also the president of Montgomery County Students for Change, a group of over 300 high school and middle school students working to solve some of the most pressing issues facing young people in our county and beyond. I speak on behalf of myself and the organization when I say that civic engagement and free speech are non-negotiable. In February of 2018, students across the country witnessed the horrific shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. In Montgomery County, Maryland, we felt the weight of that event. We also realized that we had a voice. We had the ability to mobilize and plan a protest in our nation's capital. In March, a month after the Parkland shooting, thousands of us from Montgomery County and the greater DMV area walked out of school and headed to the Capitol. We made it clear that we were ready for real action on the national scale to combat the crisis of gun violence. The ability of young people to speak out is not a luxury, it is a right. That day was made possible by our ability to assemble, but many students stayed behind out of fear of facing consequences or having an unsupportive school administration. No student should ever face uncertainty or suppression when it comes to being heard. As students, we are directly impacted by the actions of our schools, school districts, county councils, state legislatures, and federal government. Therefore, our voices are a vital piece of representative decision-making, and we reserve the right to make them heard in whatever way we see fit within the realm of peaceful demonstration. What we have come to learn is that the ability to demonstrate is a vital step in bringing about the change we wish to see. Our voices belong both outside and inside of decision-making spaces when it comes to our educations, environment, lives, and anything else. Suppressing student voices is an act of suppressing democracy. This bill is the first step in protecting young people's right to advocate for themselves and in turn, a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galillo. Thank you all very much. I think you give us a lot of confidence in our future generations. Any questions for these 5 students? All right, thank you all very much. Thank you, Delegate Ebersol. We're done with the hearing on House Bill 753. We will move next to House Bill 776. Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And I'm here to testify. One of the great things about being involved with the Early Childhood Subcommittee is that I've learned about programs that exist. A couple of years ago, the legislature decided to ban the suspension or expulsion, except under extreme circumstances, of children in pre-K through 2. All the research showed that there was no real benefit to that. However, people complained bitterly, especially those working in schools, about the difficulty of dealing with students that they didn't know how to deal with. And I discovered there's something called the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultant Project in Maryland. We put about $2 million a year into it. And this program is designed actually to help pre-K to 2, but also anybody else who needs help understanding how to manage students in general or particular students. And one of the things that we've come up against is we're about to enter into a mixed delivery system with schools that are privately owned or run by nonprofits that are going to be running our pre-K programs. And also they're often child cares as well. As child cares and nonprofits, they can merely expel a student that they don't think they know how to deal with. probably not out of anger, probably out of frustration. But this group, the Early Childhood Mental Health Consultant Project, can help them to keep their customer and their student in the building by helping them to learn how to deal with it. We feel this program is going to need expansion as we go into the blueprint and we begin to see pre-K get expanded, and also childcare just needs it. And so this does not, we bandied around the idea of just asking for more money, but we thought it'd be good to justify it first and then ask for the money next year if things come out like they do. So all this does is require MSDE to conduct a study of this on a number of points. And I'm not going to go over them all because we have some people who are going to testify and tell you what things it is that we are looking for to look at this, at the success of this program and the possible need for the expansion of it to help the mental health of our very young children in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Ebersole. Any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, I'll call on the first person signed up. We have Margot Candelaria.
Hi there. Sorry about that. Yes, my name is Margot Candelaria. Thank you, Chairwoman Kaiser and Delegate Ebersole on the committee for having me today. I am currently a research assistant professor at the University of Maryland School of Social Work at the Institute for Innovation and Implementation. I'm here today to provide favorable support for the bill. As Delegate Ebersole said, we do have this consultation program in Maryland. Nationally and in Maryland, we have data to show that it does effectively improve child behavior scores, both at the classroom level and the individual child level, as well as help with teacher support, teachers feeling good about the behavior and retain kids in school to prevent preschool suspension and expulsion rates. This program began actually in 2002, a small pilot project in Baltimore City and on the Eastern Shore through a collaboration with the University of Maryland, Georgetown University, Behavioral Health Administration, and MSDE. And due to those positive results, it expanded to 12 programs that now cover all 24 jurisdictions. I have had the lovely benefit of being the lead evaluator for the project in the state for the last 4 or 5 years. And so we put out data on the outcomes and benefits it has for children in classrooms every year. However, we have about 38 consultants in the state. It is severely underfunded. It's been level funded for almost 10 years, actually over a decade. As an example, Baltimore City has 19+ thousand childcare slots and 2 consultants to serve the entire city. So we know that it works well, but we also know that it does not have the coverage to serve all of the kids in need. So this study would actually be able to help us identify where is their reach, where are we missing kids, what would be the full cost of, having coverage statewide. The other thing I would like to say is we, through a partnership with the National Center of Excellence in Early and Infant Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation, in 2020, July of 2020, upgraded and published new standards, working with the state to increase the qualifications and competencies of the workforce. So currently we previously did not require licensure, clinical licensure for providers, and we're moving to a tiered system where every program can have access to a licensed provider when needed or to provide supervision. The reason we did that is we don't want to replace the existing workforce. We know that it can work well. And we have data that we're publishing to show that it can work well without a license. But we also know that some cases require a clinical license. So what we're trying to do is just really deeply embed highly qualified candidates in the system. However, with level funding, we actually can't find enough people who are qualified. And we did a survey last year that showed that there's often a 3 to 12 month vacancy in programs because we don't have the workforce and we don't have enough money to pay highly qualified.
Ms. Candelaria, 3 minutes are up.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Just so everyone else, watch the timer and save your last 10 seconds for that wrap up. Mr. Mcsherry.
Madam Chair, honorable members, good afternoon. My name is Clinton Mcsherry, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at Maryland Family Network. I'm especially happy to be here in strong support of this legislation because early childhood mental health consultation is a program that's been near to my heart since I started at Maryland Family Network in the year 2000. I guess you could say that in the ensuing 20 years, I haven't been particularly good at my job since I keep coming back to this committee with more issues and problems to solve. But this, I'm happy to say, is not one of them. This, Madam Chair, is a bona fide success story. Back in 2000, the early pilot projects of early childhood mental health consultation were getting underway. In 2005, Georgetown University published an evaluation of the pilots, and the results were so outstanding that then Governor Ehrlich allocated funding to roll out the program statewide. A very prominent DLS analyst at the time, he actually still walks among us, said to me, this is exactly how good public policy should proceed. You start with a good idea, you pilot it, you evaluate it, and when the results are this good, you scale it up. And happily, that is what the state did. If there is a problem with the program, it's that the funding has remained virtually stagnant since then. Meanwhile, demand for early childhood mental health services has steadily increased. As we once again sharpen our focus on preventing expulsions and suspensions for our youngest learners, we need to look at this program's scope and reach. You will hear from some providers who will tell you that there's a vast disparity between the availability of services and the demand for them. This bill will help us quantify that gap, which is the essential first step toward correcting it. With that, I'll thank you for your attention and urge your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mcsherry. Morgan Horvath? All right.
Hi, thank you. Sorry. Hi, Chair Kaiser and members of the committee. Thank you. My name is Morgan Horvath. I'm director of Project ACT, which is a program of Abilities Network, and we provide the IECMH services in Baltimore, Hartford, and Cecil counties. I've been in the field of early childhood for 20 years. I'm part of Maryland's IECMH project for the last 9 years. And I've seen firsthand how this project supports families by preventing expulsion from childcare programs. It's a pleasure to be here in support of this legislation. Project ACT utilizes a highly effective multidisciplinary team, including mental health professionals and special educators, to address the wide variety of needs faced by our community. Over 90% of the children that we serve are retained in their programs. At least 20% of these children are eligible for special education services, yet neither the child nor the teachers receive any support in the childcare setting. Isabella, she's a 4-year-old in Baltimore County, was unable to communicate her needs or participate in any classroom activities. Her teachers were struggling with challenging behaviors and asking for help. Project ACT was the only program available to provide them with support after the school system would not even assess her for eligibility for special education services. We know our model is effective, but we lack the capacity to meet the demand from our communities. During most years, we're unable to open new cases in the fourth quarter of the grant year, and children are put on a wait list. Julius, Noah, Gabriel, Dylan, Liam, Zion, Paige, Brian, Caden, Blake, Trayvon, Bryson, Lima, Aubriella, Owen, Madeline, Daquan, Nicholas, Benjamin. These are only some of the toddlers and preschoolers who had been removed from their childcare programs by the time we had a consultant available. There are over 41,000 childcare spots in the 3 counties that we serve, and we are currently funded to support only 0.2% of that population. So a gap analysis of the needs of the community and the availability of IECMH services is not only important, but essential for working families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We next have Allison Nelson.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Allison Nelson. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, and I am a parent who wants to speak favorably about House Bill 776. I have 3 children, currently 3, 5, and 7. I want to speak a little bit about my personal experience with the infant and early childhood mental health consultation program. I had the pleasure of working with one of the providers. Her name is Dawn, and within Montgomery County when my son was 4 years old. I'm kind of emotional about this. I think it's such a wonderful thing. I believe that she was instrumental in how well he is doing now. He's currently in 2nd grade, almost 8 years old. There are many reasons why working with early childhood mental health professionals, improved with an early childhood mental health professional, improved our outcome. One of the main reasons is that Dawn worked with the school, the teachers, and our family. She was able to go into the classroom on many occasions, observe, get a real sense of the support that my son and our family needed, as well as the teachers. She was able to give the teachers the tools that they needed in order to help my son. Additionally, this was the best part. This was a benefit to all of the children that were in the class. I was actually speaking to one of my girlfriends about this the other day. Her daughter was in the class as well, and she said that every single person in that class benefited. And I just, I think that's amazing. What we found to be the best part of it was the attention and the hands-on approach. My son's challenges, they're not typical challenges. And they wouldn't normally receive help in a classroom. So, like for us, he wouldn't have had a physical therapist or speech therapist that we would have worked with in the classroom come in or not come in. So this type of program really helped to help because of the challenges with the mental health component of his challenges. And without the help of Dawn, I don't honestly know what we would have done today. I don't know if we would have done anything, honestly. Based on my relationship with her, our relationship with her, I feel like I am able to successfully advocate for our son. We've been working with a developmental pediatrician as well as an occupational therapist. And this is amazing. It's huge. I can't speak enough about how great this is. And I see my 10 seconds. And I just, please, keep this program. And
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Howe?
Yes, hello. Hi, my name is Carolyn. This is Ira over here. We're the directors at the Children in the Shoe Child Care Center in Bethesda. We're here in support of the House Bill 776, and we can't endorse it enough. We are a child care center serving children, infants through pre-K, and we wanted to follow up on our written testimony by reiterating our support for this early childhood mental health consultation project. It was an invaluable experience for our whole community. Because of the support that we received, our consultants, from our consultants, we were better able to service and assist the teachers, our families, our children through their challenges. And every year we see challenges within our classrooms, and they were here to support us, give us strategies, and help them to practice, helped us to be able to practice them each and every day. We completely support this project. We're not going to go on and meet our 3-minute mark, but it was an invaluable opportunity that we took full advantage of, and we really appreciated it. Thank you. Can you?
Thank you both. Yes. Melissa Rock?
Sorry, just searching for the unmute button, of course. Good afternoon, Chair Kaiser, Vice Chair Washington, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this important bill today. My name is Melissa Rock. I am the Birth to 3 Strategic Initiative Director at Advocates for Children and Youth. ACY is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that builds a strong Maryland by advancing policies and programs to ensure children and families of every race, ethnicity, and place of birth achieve their full potential. While it isn't often discussed, early childhood mental health is one of the most crucial pieces of early childhood development. The social emotional skills are what help young children regulate their emotions and be able to focus so that they can both learn and engage well with other children. Early childhood mental health consultation ensures that social emotional issues that young children are having are identified early before they become bigger problems. I do hope this study ends up leading to an expansion of Maryland's program. As my testimony indicates, the COVID-19 pandemic has made early childhood mental health consultation more important than ever. The pandemic has negatively impacted children's mental health, as the data in my written testimony shows. Based on what we know about how important routine and stability are for young children, we can also presume that the disruptions to the childcare industry have negatively impacted even the youngest children's behavioral health. I am here supporting with just one amendment to ensure that as the study is being done, a piece of the study is to also look at the workforce qualifications. As Margot Candelaria was talking, this is going to be a tiered approach. Given that studies have shown that there are improved outcomes when the consultants have behavioral health backgrounds, I just want to make sure that the study looks at that aspect of the workforce. I'm very grateful to Delegate Ebersol for introducing this important bill, and I urge this committee to issue a favorable report as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rock. Members, any questions for any of these 5 experts? And anyone? All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. We're done with the hearing on House Bill 776. We'll move on. If Delegate Shoemaker is here, to House Bill 817. If not, we have Molly from his office.
Hi, it's just going to be me. For the record, my name is Molly Cole and I work for Delegate Shoemaker, and I will be presenting his bill today, House Bill 817. This bill essentially is going to allow for the class of 2021 seniors to have an additional year of eligibility in order to play the sports that they've played for the previous years of their high school careers at their respective high schools. So in order to have these students participate, they do have to maintain their academic eligibility through this current academic year, and they have to play at the school that they attended, so they cannot hop high schools while they're going back to play. We just think, on a personal note, as a coach and mentor for student athletes, they've had such a great sacrifice along with all of our other students this past year with the pandemic, and most haven't been able to play their sports to the magnitude that they are used to. So I think that this bill would really allow for some good to come back to the community and the students, to allow for these sports seasons to continue next year with the seniors that got to miss out on their seasons this year. So we ask for a favorable support for this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Any questions for Molly? If you were in the room, in our committee room, you would have had 22 hands up for you today, Molly, but it's hard for us to coordinate that when we're on the Zoom. If there's no questions, there are 2 people signed up on this bill, House Bill 817. We first have, I'm sorry, just one other person, William Thompson. Are you here? All right. I guess we are done with the hearing on House Bill 817. Delegate Rose, you have 2 bills, House Bill 820.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee.
I don't know where I am. I just have to make sure.
Delegate Rose, go ahead.
Okay, for the record, Delegate April Rose from Carroll County, here to present House Bill 820. We've had this bill before, both this one and the next one, so most of you will be familiar with it. This one is the County Boards of Education requiring just a report annually to state what computer science courses are being offered in schools and who is taking them. The important key part not only is the actual classes that are being offered, but also who is taking them. You'll see in my written testimony, and I know you've heard this bill several times, and I'd be happy to answer questions. We have a large number of women not represented in the STEM fields. I've provided links to code.org that continues to document that. I know there's been a lot of national attention paid to that, which makes me very happy. But at the same time, I think it's extremely important that we find out not only what computer science courses are being offered, but who is taking them. In particular, and in reading the fiscal notes and the comments from some of the testimony submitted, it isn't just that they're offering quote unquote a computer science course, because in Carroll County in particular, in the 9th grade, they are offered what is called a computer science course. But to quote my son, who's now graduated, they are basically a joke. They're basic computing courses, talking about keyboarding and very rudimentary concepts, which most kids by the time they're in high school are far above that level. And so it's not challenging. It's not something that really will entertain an excitement into a field of work that will really give kids an opportunity to see what's available out there for these particular classes. So I think it's important just to gather that data. And again, that bill, I believe it passed in 2019 and then it stalled in the Senate. So I'm bringing it back again. And I think this is just very important information for us to gather so we can make sure that we are supplying our kids with great opportunities to be exposed to computer science, and hopefully if they choose to go into that field, go into a very highly lucrative field. And you can read my testimony, so I won't belabor it because of the time, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Rose. Any questions for Delegate Rose? All right, we're done with the hearing on House Bill 820 to members. We have 2 bills left, one of Delegate Rose's, one of mine. Both are sponsor only. The Democrats have a caucus in 6 minutes. The Republicans probably do as well. We will be done by then. Delegate Rose, you take the first half. In fact, you take the first 2/3 of the remaining time.
Okay, well, I will be quick as well. We've had this bill as well. This is for the record, Delegate April Rose from Carroll County, here to support House Bill 823. This is the bill that would allow a computer science or computer programming class to satisfy one of the mathematics credits to graduate from high school. This bill passed both our committee and the full House last year. It made it to the Senate, and again, because of timing, never got a hearing or movement on the Senate side. And I appreciate the support last year. Again, this is extremely important. I think we've heard a lot of bills even today. You know, how important computer science and computer skills are, certainly going through the pandemic. I think it's been made abundantly clear how important these skills are. I've provided testimony and again, links to a great resource, code.org, that will tell you the salary ranges for careers in this field are extremely high and lucrative by where we live here in Maryland, both from the federal government arena. You have opportunities for great career opportunities. This is something, as you all know, has been a passion for me over the years. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I won't belabor it because we've had this bill several times, and appreciate, you know, the testimony that has been supplied. One thing the fiscal note, the only thing I will bring to your attention, the fiscal note mentions that you can use it for AP or CTE programs. And this, I brought this up every year. Not everybody can get into the AP programs, and not everyone has an opportunity to be in a CTE program. And in Carroll County in particular, that's a space issue. We did just break ground and we're hoping to expand that. But for our kids that are in school right now, we need to make this an opportunity. And again, the most important thing behind this is when you allow it to be a graduation requirement, it makes it count. And when our kids are choosing their schedules, if they've got to satisfy certain requirements, there's going to be the things that they must do. And then there's might be things that they would like to do, but they don't have room in their schedule. So I hope that you'll consider that as we move forward, and I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Rose. Delegate Ebersol?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just checking, I know that we put a few amendments in the bill last year, and I'm looking at it, looks like it, I'd have to double check, but I'm guessing that you put it in as amended.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we're done with the hearing on House Bill 823. Delegate Rose, you left me 1 minute. House Bill 854 is my bill on the longitudinal data system, and we did pass this last year. I believe our longitudinal data system helps us make more effective policymaking lets us find best practices across the state. This is just dealing with state-sponsored out-of-home care. And this will help with some of our foster care students and others and looking at their educational attainment. And this bill would also provide a data dashboard. So I ask for your favorable passage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. That concludes the public hearing for your bill, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you all very much. See you later on the floor, and see you next week. Everyone have a great weekend.